parts of it as well is that people just don't realise what an extremely beautiful part of the world it is, and people looking for new experiences. So that's obviously countries such as Latvia, Finland, Denmark. I've been to all of those three places. I strongly recommend them. But having said that, not everybody is very fond of rain. I've just got back from
What do you mean?
Copenhagen.
I love it.
I don't know what it is. I just got back from Copenhagen, and one day it was very like the European next day very cold. So I was quite relieved that it was a great experience, but the weather wasn't the best. And also one very last thing I will say, we're hearing from so many customers saying quite clear with us, it's been such a rich out summer, they're desperate to get spoiled and get some mountains.
Hazel, and you've seen that as well, isn't it? It's definitely so different from our customers who want to travel in a sunny climate. As I think there's always been, rain is never necessarily the best business alternative. But I do think it is something that is now in the back of customers' minds, and they are looking to visit options, whether that be spreading that sort of travel mode across the year, or looking to those sort of perhaps middle grounds in terms of the climate as well.
Well, talking about capacity and storm just a moment ago, that was whether or not it will affect the south. When you see your customers going north towards Scandinavia and even as far as Iceland, do they have the capacity to cope with increasing numbers of people?
Absolutely, I think opportunity within the summer months for capacity. And I think the other thing that it does is for other communities they see the benefits of tourism right across the year, so it spreads that economic benefit as well as a economic investment.
Hazel Black, Insurance Captain, thank you so much. Now, 7 years have experienced a delay in sending or receiving letters with citizens' advice. The consequences of this can be far-reaching. It can lead to people missing health appointments, legal documents not arriving on time, or fines and benefit decisions. And one of those people is John. Citizens Advice put us in touch with John. He's 57 and told me how the
what your previous life was very active. And then what happened to you? What stopped you riding bikes?
I got oral cancer.
Oh, sorry.
So I had a good part of my tongue took out, and then as part of the oral got melted, and took out some teeth, and eventually signs of cancer around that within 5 millimeters of the site of where the cancerous tumour was. Got a dry now. I believe for life now. So they're not filtered out with water, but it's still been dry. So yeah, they told me that you want to work for as long as it takes really.
It's amazing that your speech is so clear, bearing in mind what you've been through. I mean, the surgery's done an incredible job. Do you want to go back to that?
Well, yeah. I've been self-employed for 39 years, so when I work, I earn money, and I am definitely not used to sitting around.
So you've had a big note from the doctor explaining the situation that you've been in for quite a while. What happened with that tip note?
I had sent them 3 months notice, so I thought that covered ESA and Universal Credit. I turned out it didn't. So I went to the bank one day, and I thought, well, I must go to the supermarket to get the bit. And I found it was overdrawn because my electricity bill had come out. I thought, well, I should pay. Anyway, the following day, I got a letter here from the Employment Support Allowance, or ESA, saying that they needn't see a bit note. But when I got the letter, it was dated 2 weeks before I received it.
And that's a letter through the post to Royal Mail.
Yeah, so then, I didn't know anything about it, so I had to let the ESA know that I had a bit note. Luckily enough, at the job centre, they actually managed to contact the ESA, basically showed them I was sending a copy
deadline to apply for that benefit because the letter was delayed. What was that like?
Well, I realised that there was no money in the bank, that's why I was overdrawn. I thought, well, that's why I won't be going to the supermarket. So I brought the job centre and I asked them if they could do, because I got rubbish with computers and online and this and that, so I was able to get it resolved.
Oh, it must have been a huge relief.
Yeah, well, it was. But eating has been a problem for me for basically since the operation. If, you know, when I go shopping now, I shop day for day. Something I can eat today, I might not be able to eat tomorrow. And obviously, I've got to look at my budget and things on tomorrow. So I did provide my benefits and stuff on March. And then I cover my electricity bill and then the supermarket. Actually, when there was anything there, Anthony, but I still had some of those protein drinks that they give you, so I just got those.
Well, simply because the money hadn't come in, because the letter from the Royal Mail was 2 weeks delayed. Therefore, it had no money in the account, so you couldn't eat.
Yeah, well, I couldn't have over the money, the more overdrawn. And never go overdrawn. So, yeah, it was a very nice thing. It was just odd thing,
And when you realised that the letter had taken 2 weeks from the date it was sent to the time you got it, what did you think of Royal Mail at that time?
I thought there's something terribly wrong somewhere, and surely somebody must be accountable somewhere. I also thought of what I thought of what I used to do for a living, and I thought, well, I understand why people use people like me to make their report and stuff to make the.
There is an irony, isn't it, that we're talking to you, a motorcycle courier, for many, many, many years, whose absolute job was to get something from one place to another by a deadline, and then you suffer at the hands of an organisation that's absolute job is to get something to you by a deadline.
Yeah, I can understand maybe, I don't know, 3 days or something like that. But even 3 days I would think is pretty short. But 2 weeks.
You mentioned you couldn't go to the supermarket that day, and that gives an indication of how important that £300 was to you. But you also mentioned that you're not very good with computers and, that sort of thing. So how important is the postal system to you?
Well, that's what I rely on postal. If I can't go somewhere and just speak to somebody or have a telephone number, I'm not a right one.
So the postal service is fundamental to your existence.
Yeah, it is.
How much do you trust the Royal Mail now?
I don't. I don't.
Sir John explained earlier, Royal Mail did send us a statement and they said they're sorry for the service John received and the inconvenience it caused. They're looking into the level of service where John lives, and they say posties are working hard to ensure all mail is delivered on time. Delivering a consistent, reliable service is our top priority, and we reassure customers that we're taking action to drive improvements. Well, listening to all that is Beth Foley. She's the Principal Policy Manager at Citizen Supplies. Beth, what extent of problems are you seeing with Royal Mail when people contact you?
So yes, our latest research has found delays with post hit almost 1 in 6 adults this spring, so that's around 7.2 million people.
Now that's an extrapolated figure, though, isn't it? That's not, you've spoken to 7 million people.
No, we did a representative sample of 2,000 people, and we also speak to people every day on our front line, like John, on these issues. And as his story makes clear, those delays go far beyond just missing a birthday card. We still see lots of vital information travelling by letter. So a lot of people in delays tend to experience serious harm as a result. That could be missing medical appointment letters, fines, bills, benefit decision like John's. And these can have big repercussions, so it's not just stress and inconvenience, but sometimes direct financial losses, often at points people can least afford it.
And are you seeing this as a change in what people are experiencing? I mean, is this a new problem?
Well, this is the 4th year running that we've raised the alarm for standard slipping at Royal Mail and the impact it's having on so many of us.
We feel that Ofcom, who's the regulator responsible, isn't doing enough at the moment to tackle this issue. As John says, Royal Mail needs to be held accountable for the service that they're providing. And even with nearly half a decade of missed targets, Royal Mail's received just 2 relatively small fines from the regulator. We feel these are in danger of simply becoming the cost of doing business for them.
What do you mean just paying the fines? I mean, Ofcom sent us a statement and they said as well as investigating and fining Royal Mail for its recent poor performance, we've been pressing the company on what it's doing to turn things around, and we've seen some green shoots of progress recently, but there's more for the company to do, and they say they'll continue to hold Royal Mail to account and take action on behalf of its customers. Do you see that as not enough?
We can see there's been some small improvement in Royal Mail's quality of service results since last year, but they're still not meeting any of the targets set by the regulator. And it's also important to note that last year Royal Mail was affected by strikes. This isn't the case this year, but our research still indicates that millions of us are experiencing problems. And when you hear the comments of people like John and advisors in our frontline services, you can see how this is affecting people. And these are the issues we think Ofcom and Royal Mail should now be focusing on.
This is all about the Universal Service Obligation, isn't it? Where they have the duty to deliver you a piece of mail to your house under a certain deadline. Just explain the details of how the USO works.
So the Universal Service Obligation essentially sets out the standards for the UK Postal Service, which is provided by Royal Mail. So that includes things like delivering and collecting letters 6 days a week, making prices affordable and uniform across the country, and hitting speed of delivery targets set out by the regulator Ofcom. But Ofcom is now reviewing Royal Mail's legal requirements under the USO, and we really need to use that process to get a grip on some of the problems that we're seeing and that are affecting people like John.
Well, there's been a takeover bid for Royal Mail, hasn't there, by Daniel Patinsky? He's the man behind the bid, and he said he won't change the Universal Service Obligation. Is that likely?
So our focus is on consumers, and basically no matter who owns Royal Mail, we want to see their needs placed at the heart of delivering the service. But this makes it really vital that any takeover bid or change of ownership is fully scrutinised and sufficient protection is put in place. In terms of what we're seeing with the question of the current takeover, we do have a number of concerns. The first is the fairly minimal legal commitments actually set out by the new owners. So we've only seen a commitment to delivering the USO for 5 years, and we've also been worried by the lack of political scrutiny we've seen so far. So this process has largely played out while Parliament has been dissolved for the election, and we now need the new government to be looking really closely at these issues. Generally, I think a takeover bid for the company makes the debate around Royal Mail's legal requirements even more important to get right.
Even though it's very important for a small number of people, so many people don't use the Royal Mail because they use email, because they use telephones and computers. It is very difficult to keep that USO going unless you increase prices.
Yes, we have seen letter volumes declining in recent years. We're not opposed to reviewing what consumers need from the USO, but what we need to see is a much fairer balance from the regulator. So decisions can't be made solely on the basis of Royal Mail's bottom line. We need that universal service provider to deliver something that meets consumer needs. We're also concerned that prices have gone up far more than we would expect in line with inflation in recent years. So a first-class stamp now costs nearly double what it did just 5 years ago. In 2019 it was 70 pence, now it's £1.35. In a context where Royal Mail is also missed its targets, that effectively means people are paying more each year and getting far less.
Both slowly from citizens that's an emails actually, not letters. All about charity shops. Jane has emailed on this. She says, bring back a jumble sale. It's hard to find anything interesting that hasn't been researched and eBay and priced accordingly, so you may as well go to eBay. And Michelle from Nottingham says, honestly, what's the problem with prices going up in charity shops? They're still worth it and not making the customers are trying to reduce them. Well, that's all for today. Tomorrow, I'm here with our phone in. We are staying with customer service for what we do about not only the times when it's been rubbish, but more importantly, tell us the times you've had a brilliant time, terrific customer service, and what difference has that made to you and what you feel about the organization? Tell me when it's been fair. Customer service, you and yours at bbc.co.uk. Please log on and listen to the which just after midday, please.
Thank you, Shani. Shani Baldwin with you News, which was produced in Salford by Charlie Plummercourt. It's a BBC Audio North production for Radio 4. Sarah Montague is standing by with One at 1, and then at 1:45 we'll be continuing our series about the biggest jailbreak in British and Irish history, Escape from the Maze. That's all ahead, but now time for a weather update. Sarah Keith-Lucas.
Thank you. Well, things are looking rather overcast out there for the rest of today, but many of us are going to be staying dry with a bit of sunshine gradually breaking through the cloud and a few showers in the clouds as well. So let's put some detail about the rest of today. We're looking at all of southern England through Wales, the Midlands and eastern England. A fair amount of cloud in the skies, but some sunshine at the moment, particularly in a band from the likes of Exeter towards Oxford, Peterborough as well. So some sunny spells, and they'll become more extensive as we head through the next few hours. Reasonably warm, 18 to 24, even 25 down towards the southeast, but a bit of a noticeable breeze coming in from the southwest. And later in the day, we'll see sunset, we'll see rain spreading in across Cornwall, Devon, Pembrokeshire, as well as moving in the west. Now a bit further north, so we'll have all of northern England, Northern Ireland, central and southern Scotland. And here we're going to keep the cloud for the rest of today, and it's going to produce a few showers. We've already got those showers, of course, northern England, central and eastern Scotland, but they'll start to crop up from northern England as well. Now with light winds, if you do catch a shower, quite sharp and quite slow moving as well, but we won't all see them, they are reasonably hit and miss. So some drier spells, and temperatures here between about 17 to 21 degrees. Lastly, for the rest of today, for northern Scotland, it is looking fine and dry. Best of the sunshine will be for northern parts of the island, up towards the Highlands as well. Now overnight, showery rain drifts its way eastwards. Clear spells follow from the west. It's going to be warm and humid in the south, temperatures between about 14 to 17, fresher further north. And tomorrow we've got early rain clearing away from the southeast, and it'll be a day of sunny spells and just 1 or 2 scattered showers.
Sometimes it's the unexpected stuff that gets captured. Almost always ends up being the stuff that you see in the movie trailers because it's one of the best jokes.
With new castaways, including Rebel Wilson, Rob Dylan, and novelist David Nichols.
I think it's very hard to write about happiness and contentment.
Plus, the boxer Anthony Joshua shares the music that inspired his journey all the way to the top.
It's hard because I'm trying to be a professional boxer and be the best I can be, but yet I'm still trying to be the same guy who I'm with my friends and stuff.
Desert Island Discs. Me. Listen on BBC Sounds.
On 92 to 95 FM, on BBC Sounds and your smart speaker, this is BBC Radio 4.
Hello and welcome to the World at One with me, Sarah Montague. Democrats line up behind Kamala Harris for president. Donald Trump's team are already on the attack.
Kamala was in on it. She covered up Joe's obvious mental decline.
Our president is in good shape, in good health.
Kamala knew Joe couldn't do the job.
Following President Biden's exit from the US election, we profiled a potential new Democratic presidential candidate and asked one of America's top pollsters how Harris fares against Trump. Also this lunchtime.
I have to say that we won't be content just to pull the easy lever of importing skills. We're turning the page on that.
The Prime Minister announces a shake-up of skills training in England. The Education Minister and former Home Secretary Jackie, now Baroness Smith, will join us live. And the strange case of a woman who used asparagus to predict the future, and they actually have been correct.
Well, I'm going to tell you it's neither of them. It's a lady. Next president of the United States is going to be a woman.
We'll speak to the fortune teller, described as Mystic Veg, and ask her to make a prediction. The BBC News is read by Jane Steele.
Senior Democrats have begun uniting behind the US Vice President Kamala Harris in her bid to be the party's presidential nominee after Joe Biden's announcement yesterday that he wouldn't stand for re-election. Many leading party members, including Bill and Hillary Clinton and several governors, have followed Mr. Biden's lead and endorsed Ms. Harris. Barack Obama is yet to say who he supports and appeared to call for a more competitive process to choose the nominee. Our correspondent Monia Iqbal reports from Washington.
With just 4 months to go until the presidential election, it's still unclear who will be the person that takes on Donald Trump.
After President Biden announced he wouldn't be rerunning, the Democratic Party has started to coalesce around Kamala Harris. Reports suggest public donations for her hit nearly $50 million overnight. However, she doesn't guarantee the nomination. Significantly, the former President Barack Obama has suggested an open nominating process that would potentially take place at the Democratic National Convention in August. But it would create more weeks of scramble and uncertainty for the Democrats, who were keen to project unity after the chaotic last 2 months. Ms. Harris is due to appear at a pre-scheduled White House event later today, while President Biden remains at home in Delaware recovering from COVID.
The Prime Minister has announced plans for a new government agency to reduce what can be described as an over-reliance on foreign workers. Keir Starmer said Skills England would see the government work with businesses, trade unions and training providers to identify and plug skills gaps. Speaking at the Farnborough International Air Show, from there our political correspondent Nick Hadley reports.
The government has made growing the economy its key pledge to voters, and reforming the jobs market is a central element of their strategy. Number 10 argues the current setup is too fractured and that government needs to work more closely with businesses and unions to address skill shortages. And the Prime Minister has explicitly linked that to reducing immigration. He said today the reform would help address over-reliance on foreign workers, but he's less willing to talk about when. He told me there was no quick fix, and he would not put an arbitrary date on when voters might see results.
The government has refused to bail out the struggling shipbuilder Harland and Wolff. The company had applied for a large loan guarantee to avoid collapsing into administration for the second time in 5 years. More from our Ireland correspondent Sarah Gervin.
Harland and Wolff is most famous for constructing the Titanic. It employs about 1,500 people, mainly at its Belfast shipyard, but also at 2 smaller facilities in Scotland and 1 in England. The company had planned to borrow up to £200 million with the government acting as guarantor. That meant if the loans went bad, the government would have to step in and pay the lenders. The Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds has said the bid was turned down because there was a very substantial risk that taxpayer money would be lost. He said the market was best placed to resolve Harland and Wolff's issues. Last week, the company said it was in talks to agree additional funding with its lender within days.
6 people have been arrested after a teenager was shot dead in East London. The 15 was found injured in a busy park in Market Road last night. At the scene, and Correspondent John Johnson reports.
Police say the shooting happened shortly after 7 o'clock yesterday evening. The area was busy with a family fun day taking place in the park. Officers say the boy who was killed is thought to have been 15 years old, but have not yet confirmed his identity. At the scene, a large police presence remains with forensic officers on site. There is considerable shock in this built-up residential neighbourhood, with parents trying to take their children to school this morning, finding the roads blocked by a wide police cordon. Detectives say 6 males have been arrested on suspicion of murder and are appealing for anyone with any information to come forward.
The communications regulator Ofcom has fined BT £17.5 million for what it called a catastrophic failure of its emergency call handling service. The fault affected 14,000 calls over a near 11-hour period in June last year. Our business reporter Oliver Smith has the details.
BT plays a crucial role supporting the UK's emergency services by connecting all 999 calls, but on the 25th of June last year, the network failed preventing the telephone company from carrying out this role for nearly 11 hours. Ofcom's investigation found that the issue led to BT call handlers being locked out of the system and calls being dropped or placed at the back of the queue. The regulator also said initial attempts to recover from the problem failed because of human error. Ofcom said the company was ill-prepared to respond to the fault and fell woefully short of its responsibility. BT said it was sincerely sorry for the distress caused.
Retailer Carpetbag has been saved from administration by a rival brand. Tapping the Carpetbag name 2 warehouses and more than 50 stores. Hundreds of shops are still expected to close, putting more than 1,000 jobs at risk. The Scottish Government has chosen Galloway as its preferred site for the UK's first new national park since 2010. Ministers have pledged to create at least one more park by the next Hollywood elections in 2026. Our Scotland correspondent Katie Hunter reports from Edinburgh.
Scotland currently has 2 national parks, the Cairngorms and Loch Lomond in the
the Trossachs, but it's more than 2 decades since a new one was created. National parks are protected areas. The aim is to conserve their history, land and wildlife, and promote sustainable development. Supporters of Galloway's bid say there would be economic and environmental benefits, but some farmers and local landowners are concerned about the restrictions it could bring. Residents and businesses will now be consulted to gauge support and consider specifics such as proposed boundaries. The Scottish Parliament will have the final say on whether Galloway does become Scotland's 3rd national park. Katie Hunter reporting.
Jane, thanks very much. Kamala Harris is now almost certainly the Democrats' choice for president. So many in the party have now endorsed her that it's hard to see how any other challenger could emerge. She'll be speaking later this afternoon. What should we know about her? Despite being vice president for the past 4 years, she's relatively unknown this side of the Atlantic. So we thought it worth spending a few minutes hearing from and about her. The 59-year-old was born in California to immigrant parents. Her mother was from India and her father from Jamaica. She's regularly spoken about the influence of her mother, including in this campaign video her team released in 2020.
I remember how people would look at my mother and make certain assumptions about her intelligence or her capacity or her right to belong. As the eldest child, you see this.
She became a lawyer, spending much of her career as a prosecutor before becoming California's Attorney General. Donald Trump donated to those campaigns. That was just over a decade ago. Then in 2016, she was elected senator, only the second black woman to serve in the chamber. She became known for her prosecutorial skills there. This was in 2019 when she grilled Donald Trump's Attorney General, William Barr, about claims of White House interference in the justice system.
Attorney General Barr, has the President or anyone at the White House ever asked or suggested that you open an investigation of anyone?
I wouldn't,
Yes or no?
could you repeat that question?
I will repeat it. Has the President or anyone at the White House ever asked or suggested that you open an investigation of anyone? Yes or no, please, sir? Seems you'd remember something like that and be able to tell us. You don't know. Okay.
3 years later, she was running for president. It was a very awkward moment in that primary campaign when she got the better of Joe Biden. She criticised him for opposing federal busing back in the 70s. That was when the federal government drove black children to schools in white neighbourhoods to try to desegregate schools.
There was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools, and she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
I did not oppose busing in America. What I opposed is busing ordered by the Department of Education.
He was reportedly furious, but he still chose her as his running mate. And in 2020, they defeated Donald Trump. By the time the result was finalised, she happened to be out on a run, and in a video that went viral, she's seen calling Joe Biden to celebrate.
We did it, Joe. You're going to be the next president of the United States.
She was given the job of overseeing immigration and the problems of border security, which is why she was asked this in one of her first major interviews.
Do you have any plans to visit the border?
I'm here in Guatemala today. At some point, we are going to the border. We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I don't understand the point that you're making.
The clip has been played many times to illustrate how poor she can be at communicating. It's a reputation that she's only built on. This word soup is from last year about Women's History Month.
During Women's History Month, we celebrate and we honor the women who made history throughout history, who saw what could be unburdened by what had been.
But now her supporters are rewriting the script and trying to make a virtue of her gaffes, like this from a speech last year, which was ridiculed by Republicans and became an online meme, but is now being shared by her fans online. She talked of the importance of remembering your background and that none of us live in silos. And then she said this.
My mother she would give us a hard time sometimes, and she would say to us, "You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?" did you live and what came before you?
Dana Goodyear is a staff writer at The Atlantic, and she wrote an in-depth profile of Kamala Harris in 2019 and interviewed her at the time. Dana, thanks for coming on the programme.
Of course, and I'm so sorry to correct right off the jump, but I write for the New Yorker magazine, not the Atlantic. But,
So sorry, I think you had written a profile in The Atlantic, and is that...
no, it was
still wrong.
actually,
Still wrong.
it was
Apologies.
in the
Let
New
me
Yorker.
stop digging. New Yorker. Okay. Can we start, Dana, with this sort of the communication problem that is associated with her? Is she always so awkward?
No, she isn't. I think she can be incredibly incisive, precise, pretty intimidating if you're on the other side of one of her interrogations, I would think. I think her communication problem has a little bit more to do with opacity when she's trying to reach a broader audience. When she is going after someone in a prosecutorial style, she's unflappable, and she can fillet someone right in front of your eyes. But when she is trying to project and communicate to a much larger political audience, that's where I think sometimes she just starts going into areas of just being vague and hard to follow. But again, when you think about Donald Trump, he's a pretty meandering speaker too, and it doesn't seem to be a problem.
Okay, I mean, one of the taglines from the Trump team is cackling Kamala, and that's that slightly uncomfortable, nervous laugh.
I just think that the political attacks can take very personal forms, and I do think that when you're talking about women in politics, these sort of what your voice sounds like, or what your laugh sounds like, or what your hair looks like, ends up becoming supposedly a point of weakness for the other side to exploit. But I think she's actually considered quite charming in person, and maybe that laugh is part of it. But it does seem to me to actually be one of the more natural parts of her, sort of the irrepressible, actual Kamala.
She, the profiles writing about her now, plenty of profiles, they all refer to what was clearly a very difficult time when she first became vice president, because there were 13 senior aides who quit. Is she difficult to work for?
I don't know I don't have inside information into that. I mean, I think I can just read the reactions the same way that everyone can. I mean, something was dysfunctional inside that office, and I don't know exactly what it was, but I think it did take her a moment to find her footing. And her campaign for president, in the 2020 election, also went through those kinds of gyrations of, who was going to be her team. I think that she's somebody who, like Joe Biden, has a very tight inner circle, and those people are quite loyal to her, and her sister is one of them.
And how different are her politics to Joe Biden's? Are we going to see a very different vision presented?
I mean, I think, the role of the American vice president is to be entirely supportive of the president's platform. So I think maybe she will reveal herself now, or I think if she were to run again in the future, I think we'd see a more decisive direction. And how to govern it, they may actually be quite similar.
Dana Goodyear, welcome. Thank you very much. Technically, there is still a chance she might not be confirmed as a Democratic candidate. It's on the next 4 weeks. Critical date on the 19th of August, when the party begins its 4-day convention in Chicago. If the 4,000 delegates who voted for President Biden in the Democratic primary earlier this year simply switch their vote to Harris, then she'll become the sole nominee. But there's still a chance that someone else might stand before then, making it an open convention where delegates will get a choice on who to back. Of course, the question that everyone, both Democrat and Republican, is asking is, can she beat partner at research company John Zombie Strategies. John, thank you for coming on The World at One.
Thank you.
What do the polls show about the answer to that question? Can she beat President Biden?
This is a very competitive race, and of course we don't have any numbers since President Biden's decision to drop out, but just up to that point and after, even after the Republican convention, this is a 1-2 race, and that is between Trump and Kamala Harris. In fact, just about the same thing to a 3-point race with Trump leading over Biden. We'll know a whole lot more about Harris. She'll have a honeymoon for about 3 days in the press. She'll get a bump, sometime around midweek, and that'll be the first time any of us will be out with any polling. I would speculate that she'd either get into a tie with Mr. Trump, who's riding a bit high since the assassination attempt and the coronation at the Republican convention. But make no mistake, this is a competitive race.
Right, so faring better than President Biden was, but not necessarily enough to win.
That's now. We'll have to see. Remember now, I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but nationally, the Democrat does have to be leading by 3 or 4 points to secure a victory, the way that electoral votes are apportioned. Winning big in California is excess votes, but you only get the victory in the state of California. You have to win other states.
And there are a few key states where it really does seem to come down to whether which way the campaign goes. How does she poll in those?
Well, again, before all of this was President Biden, she was polling at or around where President Biden was. In a couple of instances, like Michigan, actually a couple of points better than the president. And remember, we're looking at 2 and 3 point margins. But the critical states are Wisconsin, the northern rim, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Those are absolutely must-win states. She's already competitive there.
Right, and presumably the pick of a vice president could make a difference.
It could. Typically, the vice president is never really any good for more than a point, in terms of the polls, but 1 point looks very large in this kind of context.
Right, and when you know the characters involved, are there obvious contenders?
Yeah, there are. Had it not been for gender, I would put Gretchen Whitmer at the top. As the leading candidate, she can deliver Michigan. That is a sine qua non state for Democrats. They have to win that. However, having 2 women on the ticket may be pushing it a little far when you're running against Donald Trump. At the same time, the new governor of Pennsylvania, just elected in 2022, former Attorney General, though, for a number of years, has won Pennsylvania handily, and is by all accounts good on his feet as a good campaigner. Josh Shapiro. A good safe bet, I would say, is Governor of Kentucky, Andy Beshear, who won't be able to deliver Kentucky, but has shown that he has crossover appeal to both Democrats, Independents, and of course the Senate.
Thanks very much. Now, it didn't take long for the Republicans to start attacking Kamala Harris. They released this attack ad just over an hour after President Biden's announcement.
Kamala was in on it. She covered up Joe's obvious mental decline.
Our president is in good shape, in good health, tireless, vibrant, and I have no doubt about the strength of the work that we have done.
But Kamala knew Joe couldn't do the job, so she did it. Look what she got done. A border invasion, runaway inflation, the American dream dead. They created this mess. Kamala owns this failed record.
So how does Team Trump go about beating her if she's chosen? Corey Lewandowski was Donald Trump's first campaign manager in his 2016 presidential campaign and was advising a Republican convention in Milwaukee last week. asked if he thought it was wise for some Republicans to be pushing the idea that Joe Biden isn't fit to be president now, and that Kamala covered up issues around his cognitive capabilities.
Well, first and foremost, you can't be the vice president of the United States and not know what's going on in the building or down the hallway just a few short feet away. So either he was complicit in the cover-up, and a lot of people do believe that Joe Biden had the mental acuity to continue to run this country until everybody saw it on the debate stage, which we know he does not, or he's completely out of the loop and has no understanding of what's actually transpiring in the building he works in.
Okay, but just to be clear, they have not said that he doesn't have the mental acuity to run the country. They're just saying he's not going to run for president again.
Your viewers, your listeners saw Joe Biden on the presidential debate stage where he had a difficult time putting two sentences together. He had a difficult time remembering who he was. His gaffes have been so dramatic that he's called himself the first black female vice president, which he is not. Those individuals who are making statements like that are not capable of leading the United States either today or going forward.
Okay, so in your view, it's wise for the Republican team to try to prise the president out of the presidency now, rather than just focusing on her.
No, look, I think you let Joe Biden just sit there. Absolutely just let him sit there. Look, we know he's not running the country anyway, so why would you want to give Kamala Harris the opportunity to spend 4 months as the incumbent president of the United States?
Are they rattled, do you think, by the idea that suddenly former President Trump is up against someone who is just so much younger?
So is age the determining factor of someone's capability to run something? Because if that's the case, then we should put that criteria in. But age has nothing to do with it. It's about experience and ability to actually get the job done. You know, we in this country, we don't judge people based on their age, their religion, their ethnicity.
But that was the charge against Biden. I just mean in relation to President Biden. And I'm wondering how the Trump team are feeling.